Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. We're gathered here to celebrate the 100th anniversary of St. Vincent de Paul, Madison. We've assembled leaders, both organizational and volunteer, to talk about how you got involved, what the impact of the organization has been, and kind of what inspires you to continue with St. Vincent de Paul. Okay, we're starting with the question about how you personally became involved and committed to this organization. Can you describe the moment or event that first connected you with the mission of St. Vincent de Paul? And Ralph, I'll ask you to go first.
Well, I started in the late 80s. There was a lot of activity in creating volunteer organizations to help the homeless and meal programs. And I was involved with starting a number of those. And as I was backing away from some of those commitments, I thought that St. Vincent de Paul Society was really the group of people that ought to be doing some of this work, people of faith, a Catholic organization, and they weren't at any of our meetings. They weren't doing too much, and so I thought I would infiltrate them. And so instead, I think they infiltrated me, but I volunteered to be on a store committee at that point, and for several years was on the store committee. And then when there was a vacancy running the stores, I wondered, well, who are we going to get to do this job? Because it was one where you needed to have a sense of business running it, but you also needed to have a heart for the poor and all. And so at that point, I decided to sell a bookstore that I owned and ran it and take a job with the society. And through that whole period, though, I grew to love the organization for a variety of reasons, because it was unlike other volunteer jobs, positions I held, because it really combined not just the service to the poor, but also of spirituality and friendship, that you really got to work as a team together. And some of those things I found lacking in other volunteer jobs I had.
Great. Ed, I think I'll ask you to go next.
Okay. I started as a volunteer soon after Ralph started as manager of the store. He saw that there was a need for somebody to get the furniture that people were able to receive out to their homes. So I think through a friend of ours, he found out that maybe those of us who do parish church work might have some time in the afternoon. So a friend of mine and I started taking a truck from the Willie Street store out to neighborhoods, especially along Broadway, delivering furniture. I had some experience doing that as a summer job, so I thought I knew everything about it, but I learned quickly that there's a lot more to it when you're trying to find people and addresses and get those things out of the truck. So it was that was my first contact, and it made a good impression.
I'm going to go to Ernie from there, and then anybody's welcome to jump in after that. Ernie?
Sort of a brief but two-part answer. So in college, I took a course on sainthood, and it wasn't a how-to, it was academic, and I happened to pick St. Vincent de Paul, or he picked me to write my final paper about. Then I found myself in journalism grad school a couple of years later, and I cheated and turned that paper into an article that paid twice and helped pay the rent, frankly. Published it in Catholic Digest and in Ligurian. And then, so that disposed me well toward St. Vincent de Paul himself. But then in 1991, I met that guy over there, Ralph, at Luke House, which is something he helped found that and had a common involvement in. And Ralph got me onto committees of various sorts, the blanket drive to start with, and then eventually the store committee, image and development committee. So I did committee work for a number of years, and until eventually I was due to hang my shingle out for public affairs, public relations work. Asked Ralph if the society might be a cut-rate client, and he said prefer an employment relationship. So, and since then I'm a member to boot. So,
would you like to go next? We're sort of hearing from CEOs?
Sure. So I think I'm by probably quite a bit, the most recent Vincentian in the room. My husband was a founding member at the conference at our parish with Ernie, probably in 2005 or 2006. And at that time, I was working for our church, so I declined to participate. And then I took another job and for about 10 years working for a nonprofit where I was really working every day with a lot of people who were struggling with poverty, and I declined to participate because I was kind of immersed in that world. So I think it was 2019. There was the regional meeting in Marshfield. My husband Dennis asked me to go. He'd never been to a regional meeting and he wanted to go. And I said, sure, I'll go with you. I'll sit in the hot tub. And so we got there and it was an amazing weekend. It was absolutely incredible what I learned about what the society does. And so we came back and I joined our conference and I said to Dennis, like, why didn't you tell me this? But I joined our conference and it was really just a few months after that a position opened up here, and I talked with Ernie about it. We'd known each other for many years, and the next thing you know, well, it wasn't super fast because there was a pandemic that started, but it was a few months after that I started working here.
All right. I orbited around the society for a while. Ralph and I were actually freshmen together at the University of Wisconsin in St. Paul, and Ralph's roommate was my chemistry lab partner that year. And so we developed a friendship that allowed me to orbit around Ralph for those many years. But I got involved in a strange way. I was ordained a deacon in 2004, and the bishop was going to assign me to a program called Catholics Come Home. But we were sitting down with Monsignor Mike Burke, who was a great friend of the society, and Monsignor asked if I could help with the conference, which was just getting started at St. Maria Goretti. And so we said yes, and things have been wild since then. Worked with Sue McMahon and with Ralph to learn how to do home visits. And being the anal person that I am, I wrote out everything that Ralph told me when I got home. And to check it out, I sent it to Ralph. And a couple months later, I'm in a home visitor training, and there is my notes being handed out to the home visitor training. But been involved with Vincentian and with St. Maria Goretti and St. Thomas Aquinas now as the conference and spiritual advisor, and also spiritual advisor to the district.
Wonderful. So you began having an impact very early on, didn't you? And Peg.
I was born and raised in Chicago, which has a very strong St. Vincent de Paul tradition. So I was familiar with the society, but not necessarily with what the society would do. And certainly in Madison, my husband and I moved to Madison about 10 years ago after we had both retired. And when looking around for an organization that I might be able to serve the community, I was introduced to Ralph. So I'm going to say that a pivotal moment for me was a meeting that Ralph kindly took from me and talked about the society and what the society did. And what I was so impressed with was the charitable mission, first and foremost, but then also, the entrepreneurial spirit of the society, that the way that society obtains its resources for what it does and then how those resources go back out to the community. So I was very impressed by that. And I had already joined a conference at Our Lady Queen of Peace, which is my parish, and from there have taken some leadership positions and do some charitable work for the society.
Mm-hmm. I like what you highlighted there about charity and entrepreneurial spirit. That's a rare and interesting combination, isn't it? moving on to my next question is about commitment and motivation. So what has kept you dedicated to St. Vincent de Paul, Madison over the years? Can you share a moment when you felt that commitment deepen? So we're looking for a little storytelling here, not long, but for that moment when something happened that made your commitment deepen.
Well, I could start. I think for me, the commitment deepens, and it will continue to deepen, I would guess, because of the relationships that you build within this three-stool, one being friendship, the friendships that you've gained. And I'd be happy to speak about Tom Parslow, who we recently lost. And Tom was a wonderful example of a servant, not only doing home visits, but also his pivotal role for Lacy Garden. He served as garden leader for, I want to say, maybe 12 years. And it was working alongside Tom and understanding the purpose that we were gardening and then bringing it to the food pantry and seeing it distributed the next day. So Tom Parslow was a light shining for me.
Okay. So for you, friendships help deepen the commitment.
For me, needing a job deepened my commitment.
Yeah, let's get you out of the truck and into the organization here.
I lost my job at a parish as they downsized, and that spring I had a friend who was also a friend of Ralph's keep telling me, you ought to apply for a job helping Ralph out in managing the stores for St. Vincent de Paul. And I kept saying, what do I know about retail operations? Nothing. And he kept saying, yeah, you really should try. And I was not sure at all, but actually he encouraged me to put my name in anyway. And I had one interview in the what's now the back of the Willie Street store with the board, and like within minutes it seemed, but within a day or two they said, you have the job of assistant general manager if you'd like it. And I was, I was happy to have work for my 4 children and my wife and myself. But I also was so happy that the job was described not only as running the stores, but being kind of an interconnection between the parishes who have conferences and the leadership. And right away got involved with projects like the Recycle the Warmth blankets and and kind of helped get that off the ground. I think it was the second year when I came along. And I soon realized that some of the skills that I had acquired even in my summer jobs, like driving a truck or working on a dock or just being able to work with people and manage people, were going to come in handy, and not just handy, but essential to managing the store staffs. And as I did it and kind of relaxed into it, I realized this was a really good place for me to be.
Ralph, you want to follow that?
Sure, maybe 2 things. And one is relating to what Ed said, and Peg, the culture, the friendship, but it's more than that, and Ed was part of that. We really built a culture, and I see around the country even in ways we're really special in that. Everywhere from the members and our employees, we have a culture of service to the poor, but also friendship and spirituality, and we've built that together with all the people in this room. In terms of me personally, it was seeing that develop and grow, but also I was probably in a leadership role for 30 some years. And I often said I never had the same job for more than 2 years at a time. I started with 18 employees in a small little store, and then we grew into the food pantry. We started the Stoughton store and then the Beltline store, and you know, in the end, final years, I developed a pharmacy. I was able to learn how to be someone who started a pharmacy and many of the things in between. And so that was what kept me engaged. I was never bored in this job, and new people came and new projects came, and that entrepreneurial sense is a part of the society here, and really a culture of friendship and service.
Anybody here?
With me, I was involved with the Vincentians for about 10 years or so, and started to see that as we'd have our district meetings and that most of the people in the room had gray hair. And, started to chat a little bit and chatted with Gail Westhoff. And it turned out that Gail was thinking the same thing, that there was a need to get young people involved in the society. And so working with Gail and some of the other members, we started to come up with an idea to have a youth conference, a high school youth conference here in the district. And so tossing that around, trying to figure out, do we want to open it to any high school students, or do we want, students representing their high school to take the Vincentian idea back to their classmates and that. But eventually we developed the Youth Service Council, and very powerful, very open, and it's bringing a lot of young people into the Vincentian family.
Interesting.
Sure. So I think we've heard a theme about friendship and the people, and that would be true certainly for me as well. I look to Ralph and Ed and what they did to develop a culture here of people caring for one another, caring for our neighbors in need, but caring for the people they work alongside as well, whether that be employees or members or volunteers, just this deep, deep connection to people. As I looked at taking a job here, it was very attractive to me to return to an organization rooted in my Catholic faith. And that was, it has been an ongoing surprise to me how much my own faith has grown working here, just being immersed in really the corporal works of mercy, feed the hungry and clothe the naked and all of those things that happen here every day. But the other piece of that that has been such a profound experience for me is the quality of the organization itself. And again, I go back to the people in this room, what Ralph built and what Ed helped Ralph build, what Ernie did on Ralph's retirement. And then, I started here right as the pandemic was getting really bad, and Ernie kept the wheels on. And that was not true everywhere. But he really did. And then when he was ready to retire, I can't say this without crying, the absolute generosity that Ernie showed to help me understand what my role would be in this organization. And that is how this organization is built, is with that kind of generosity, truly across the board. I work with the most amazing people. Thanks, Ernie.
No, hardly. Thank you.
Ernie, here's your chance for a rebuttal.
I will follow up on that, because when Julie was up for consideration for the CEO position of the organization, I told our board that I thought that she could be a truly transformative leader, and I think that's the kind of leader she is being. So thank you, Julie. From a deepening perspective, my own experience, between 2005 and 2009, we operated on the site where we are now, a food pantry in an old automotive radiator shop that Ralph bought the site here locally. And we built what became eventually, over Ralph's objection, the Middlecamp Center that we're in right now. He said the lettering was too big. That started operating here in 2009. But in that 2005-2009 period, I was a part-time staffer, and our headquarters operation, as it were, was and had been at the processing center south of Beltline, where we take in donated goods from all locations. Moving here in 2009 as my own base of operations, I'm still a part-timer, but in the central location where the society at this district council level, the county-wide level, actually meets a range of needs, including food, and then 2013, pharmacy, gave me a more direct daily experience of the kind of value we were providing to neighbors in need from across the county. And not that I didn't know it before, but it gave me a better and more real sense of it, and that deepened my experience of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, wonderful anecdotes from each of you. I want to drill in a little bit with Deacon Dick here and ask about a little more about getting young people involved. Give us a moment, when you encountered a young person who seemed excited about this, or one who was blasé and you needed to awaken that excitement. Tell me about working with youth.
Working with the youth, you really, have to find the young person who is excited about this ministry. And when you find him or her, or maybe one or two of them, all of a sudden they attract others around them. And it's those people. And, every year somehow those people pop up. It's not us doing it. We don't go to the high schools, and recruit. It's, sending out a note to the parishes and asking youth ministers, is there someone that you would recommend? And all of a sudden, these wonderful young people show up at our doorstep, and they are so interested in what we do. Once they start to see the needs in the community around us, they are there to reach out, to help in any way we can. Now, of course, with the young people, we have to be careful not to put them into situations that might put them at risk. But Gail's been very creative in ways of getting them involved. Like for the last 5 years or so, they've been doing projects to earn money that we award then as scholarships, not only to needy students in the community, but half to the student for financial aid and half to the family, so the family or that student doesn't have to work to support his or her family. And the first year there was only a couple $1,000s that we were able, and now I think it's $30,000?
I think it was $16,000 last year.
Okay.
But our board has made the commitment to match those gifts for subsequent years. So it does really, it adds up.
The families are so shocked. Not only, I think they're used to getting scholarships for the students, but to find that, we're going to help them with food and gas and other needs for that family is...
That somebody's thinking about them, not just the
Right.
well-being of the student. Yeah.
If I can just add something to that, two things. One of the things, and I'm so glad that you talked about the scholarships, one of the things that I learned that just, sometimes the dots don't connect is almost every student who has received a scholarship provides income to their family. Mm-hmm. So going to college adds not just the expense of the student going to college, but the loss of income for the family, or if they're not providing income, they're providing childcare so parents can work another job. So it's really a profound thing that these high school students have recognized and sought a way to meet that need. The other piece that I just wanted to share, I had this amazing experience just in August. sitting on a plane unexpectedly next to two of these students as we were going to our national meeting. And both of them had just graduated high school, and both of them were looking at how to continue their Vincentian experience in college at places that did not have a conference. So both of them are thinking about how they can start a conference at their college before they even get there. It's pretty incredible.
Oh, I see future leaders there.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, we'll move on. About sustaining involvement here. Is there a particular value, and I'm thinking of the list of Vincentian values, or aspect of the organization that resonates most with you? What is it that keeps you engaged? What value of the organization sustains your engagement? Let's see, I was leaning towards this side of the room last time, so I'll start over on this side.
I'll go. So spirituality, service, and friendship intertwined make a whole picture. But I love the Vincentian virtue of zeal. And I think, we're in a time in our culture where people are tired. We had a pandemic that changed things in ways that I think we're still beginning to understand. People aren't joiners in the way that they used to be. That was just part of who we were as a society. That's changed. And yet there's this profound experience of working together for the good of others that people find attractive once they get it. And so it's inviting people to get it. And again, I have to point thanks to Ernie. So we started a little member task force to really re-energize our members across the county to help people who have become tired or know that the needs are greater than they can meet, and they're still willing to go and help. And Ernie named them the Zeal Team 6. So so I think they've dropped the 6. I think they're just the Zeal Team now. But it's that idea that you can be committed to something, to do it even when it's hard.
I guess I have two things that I would say as to why I remain committed. One is drawing on Ralph's previous comment about not having had the same job, for any more than 2 years. And I would say my experience as a volunteer is I've not had the same service for any length of time. It's grown. It's gone from just kind of putting the feet in the water to something more substantial. And also to say I am energized by the commitment that I'm seeing out at I'll keep talking about Lacy Garden. We're still harvesting produce, so I'm still in the gardening season. But during the pandemic, and as we move through the pandemic, I am seeing a greater commitment to service from others, that they're looking for meaningful outlets to serve others. And St. Vincent de Paul and the Lacy Garden with bringing fresh produce to the food pantry resonates with people. So years past, I've had to do a recruitment effort to find individuals and or groups to come out to the garden. For the last 2 years, they are finding me. I am not finding them. I'm having trouble scheduling all of the groups that would like to come out to the Lacy Garden. I have a lovely problem.
And I think that sort of touches on the quality that I want to, which is humility. I think all the members of the society are very humble people. And that makes doing this 100-year celebration hard because we don't want to talk about ourselves and all the things that we do and that. So it's, but really, the call of humility is the one that calls us to give of ourselves, to give of our time, to give of our resources, our monies, to help our neighbors in need. And that's just the core of society. And none of us really wants to toot our own horn.
My response is that it's something that's happening right now, that for years we've talked about incorporating more friendship and more spirituality into our conference meetings, but try as I might during a regular conference meeting, I've not been able to do that more than just a little bit. But finally, after a lot of nudging and urging, 5 or 6 of our Blessed Sacrament Conference members were willing to have a second meeting a month. It kind of dwindled away to almost nothing. When I showed up for the early morning meeting and I was the only one there to drink the coffee that I made, I decided it's time to do something more. So we've finally found a time a little bit later in the morning for us retirees to come together. And because we'd been talking about the challenge of being more than just a purveyor of goods as we do a home visit, a furniture visit, just what do people need, the stuff they need. In our regular evening meeting, I took out the old Serving in Hope Module 7 on doing a home visit, and we've just begun in the last couple of months to sit together for most of the hour of that second meeting, not doing the business, but finding out how each one of us is challenged and gifted to do these home visits, how we can pray. We started actually with the last part of that where we talk about, do we pray before we go? Because I've noticed that we don't. And do we pray during and after? And we are having a great kind of a blending of people's own motivations that they all seem to have. It's kind of been hidden that they really do want to grow in their own spirituality, and they see the possibility, but getting over some of the roadblocks of personal discomfort to pray, we're working on that. And so I see that they are getting the full picture of the 3 strings fitting together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've had spokespeople for zeal and for humility here. Would you like to vote for another virtue?
Well, maybe I'll bring up a different aspect, which is the reality I'm living currently, but it's kept me going for a lot of years. And that is, we're not just a local group, that we're actually an international organization. We were started by college students in Paris, France, and it spread all over the world. Within 12 years, we were in the United States in 1845. That's before the Civil War. But those international and regional friendships also developed. We do a lot of interesting things here in Madison, but I have to say, because I was willing to go out and meet other people in the society, we copied a lot of other people's good ideas and we made them better here. And now many people come from other places and look at what we're doing. And it's that network of charity. Our founder talked about having a network of charity spreading over the world. And as I see that more and more in my role as International Vice President, I see how valuable it is to be able to share ideas, but also to pray for each other, to build on each other's strengths, to support each other through weaknesses. And so a lot of what we have here, we're sharing with other people, but we also learn from those other contacts. And even in my current role, it's amazing to see that this organization is throughout the world. Just earlier in the week, I had a Zoom call where there's people from Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, Paris, France, Ireland, Argentina, and the United States on that call for 2 hours, trying to figure out how to work with countries that are having disasters and challenges. And so that network of charity, as I see it as a reality, keeps me going. And I wanted to share what we know here from Madison, and also to bring the ideas back to the United States and to Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah. Just for posterity, just explain your role in the international organization.
I'm currently the first vice president of the Council General International Board of Directors. And so it keeps me involved originally I thought it would be great when I was appointed to the board originally, because our headquarters is in Paris. I thought this would be great, 2-3 trips to Paris a year. Then COVID hit. And so I had Zoom calls at 5 in the morning every month. But I, through that, did get to meet our current international president, and he's become a good friend, and he asked me to be his vice president.
And also for posterity, if I might, Ralph's our immediate past national president for 6 years.
Had that for 6 years, and as my wife says, I'm not retired, I just don't make money anymore.
I think a lot of people relate to that.
You know, sir, if I might, it's implicit in what a lot of people have said already about maintaining commitment, but there's the Vincentian notion too that what the society is about as a member is a vocation, is a calling. And I think that that's one thing that, you know, I return to when I think about my own involvement now as a member of, well, Julie and I are in the same conference in McFarland, and so it is something I think most of us feel we're called to.
Good point. Ed, I think we haven't heard from you yet.
Oh, I talked a little bit about the getting the conference together. I'm the spiritual advisor for our conference, and kind of working past the frustration of not having time during what turns out to be a business meeting to talk about call and zeal and the things we've been talking about, and just having some success with that makes me feel that I can see the conference growing and getting closer to the ideals that we've reached for so long on a national, international basis, to live the rule.
Anybody want to speak to the virtue of gentleness? Speak to how the gentleness manifests, or any way in which that sustains commitment.
I see that in our food pantry all the time. That if you take a step back, we don't ever ask people to prove that they need help. That if somebody says they need help, whether that's our food pantry or home visit or whatever reason it might be that they're asking, we trust that they need help. And we look for a way to help, but particularly in the food pantry. And things changed so dramatically during the pandemic with having to go outside. We couldn't have people come in the building, and so it became a drive-through, which is so terribly impersonal.
Yeah.
And so not Vincentian to actually spend time with somebody to hear a little of their story. And yet our pantry staff and volunteers have, just as quick as it is for people to get food, have infused that process with dignity. That the kindness that they are intentional about in greeting every car that comes through. This is a person here. This is a family here. And it's rooted in that, you know, recognizing the dignity of every human person. Gentleness is the approach that allows you to not only treat them with kindness and dignity, but just also be in that place of being with them in whatever your capacity is to be with them. It's beautiful. And in the 30-second interactions that we hear the gratitude. I think another example of that, and again, I credit our pantry staff, they're amazing, is the absolute insistence that, I don't even remember when this was, a year ago, maybe longer ago than that the next person we hired must speak Spanish, because more than a third of the people using our pantry are Spanish speaking. We must have someone there who speaks Spanish fluently, who understands the cultural piece of being a Spanish-speaking person and the demeanor on people's faces when they encounter a Spanish-speaking person profoundly says, I am seen and heard here.
Very welcoming.
The other thing that where gentleness comes is the home visit. Because it is in the home, we meet our neighbor where they want us to meet. We go to them. They don't come to an office like they would for some other organization or have them fill out forms. We ask them, well, how can we help you? What are your needs? And we might take a look around and see, well, we see that, you need a sofa here, or what are your kids playing with? You don't have a table to eat at or chairs to sit down to. So that home visit is, bringing that dignity to the individual as well.
Right. Great answer.
I'd add another aspect too. I think we're gentle with each other, with members and with staff, and that's part of the culture. But when you step back from it, we're a multi-million-dollar business here, doing with several hundred employees, hundreds of volunteers, and I've seen other organizations who do good work, but they're at each other's throats sometimes. They're trying to make decisions, and there's place for power, but there's concerns just about the liabilities of such an organization. And I see that we've been gentle with each other, and we listen well to each other. It goes all the way up to I told a story at a meeting recently, a national meeting of our international president, where as a board we were looking at some country that big strife amongst their leadership and membership, and we were trying to figure out a way for them to solve it and do alternative things. And at some point our president, Juan Manuel from Spain, he stopped, he says, I don't find any of the Vincentian friendship in any of this.
Oh.
We've got to build that first. And so it goes all the way to the top. I mean, he was absolutely right that if we don't get back to being gentle with each other and having the values that we profess, well, we shouldn't be in this business.
Fantastic answers. Thank you all. That was interesting. Moving on to impact and sort of milestones you've experienced while you've been here. Moments of grace, moments worth celebrating, reflecting on your years of connection with this organization. What has been a most joyful or rewarding moment? Like, what filled your cup?
I'll use a recent example. It'll be a garden example to the surprise of no one. And that is this past Saturday, just 3 days ago, we had a group of 9 from the St. Paul conference that operates out of the University of Wisconsin. And to see, to work alongside of those students who were giving up their Saturday morning, and to see their excitement and enthusiasm for work that was very dirty. We were taking up very dirty tarps and pulling poles out of the ground, and there was nothing glamorous about the work. And after all was said and done, this group of 9 said, when can we come again? That's a moment of grace.
Well, would you just describe like what we would see if we came out to the garden?
Right now, it'd be pretty empty, but what you would
give me
see,
a good summer day at the
it is a working farm. It is a residential residence for 2 different families, but the Lacy family has, for the last 25 years, donated 1.25 acres of their ground for volunteers to come out and to cultivate and harvest produce for various food pantries, but mainly for St. Vincent de Paul. That relationship has really strengthened over the years. So what you would see is you would see a stand of asparagus and about 1 acre of various kinds of crops and produce. So that's what you would see. And you would see bodies, young and old, working around the plants, and so when we're in the high season, meaning the growing season, you'd see a lot of green, And now it's a gentle tan and brown as we're going into, which has its own beauty, as we're going into the colder
Thank you.
months.
Thank you. Some moments of joy, rewarding moments.
I remember back year after I started in '95, we had a fire in the warehouse in the distribution center. And what stands out to me was not the terrible damage it did, but how people, the store staff, the warehouse staff, everybody, the community, all saw that we want St. Vincent de Paul to be back up and running as soon as possible. And so the employees dealt with lack of bathroom facilities and working outside, sometimes in the cold as into the fall. The community came through with a lot of help. Conferences pitched in. I remember that as a sense of talking about gentleness of the whole community of St. Vincent de Paul and the wider Madison community, being gentle with each other and making it possible to rebirth the operation that we did here and to expand it. And yeah, I was very grateful at the moment that we were able to do that, and I felt personally, strengthened.
Yeah. Excellent example.
I'm recalling a time when I was involved in one of our blanket drives, which have been going on for 30-some years now. And I was at, I think, the Southtown site for Shopko, which sponsored the drive for years and was the various Shopkos were collection sites. And a member of my own conference, frequent Pantry volunteer, Lynn Tassif, brought a gentleman up to me, because we had 2 collection sites at that store, and she brought him over to mine, where I was taking in blankets, and explained that this man who, for a little guy, dressed in work clothes, I'd say, sort of the green of an electrician or carpenter, and she said he had been asking her about the range of services that we provided. And her presumption, it turned out later in talking to her, was he needed help. And we all do, but I ended up talking to him for a while. This fellow bought $900 worth of blankets right then, and actually became a significant donor thereafter. And it for me, it also reinforced the point about the commonality of those who help and those who are helped, that we're neighbors.
Great moment. That's a nice story. Yeah. So anyone else? Joyful, rewarding moments? You've had a few, right, Ralph?
Many. And I guess one of my favorites still also was the University of Wisconsin students. And we started them a number of years ago, and I went on home visits with them to train someone to do home visits. And the enthusiasm, and I felt like I was with our founders, really. We were founded by college students, and I could see in them that kind of spark of everything's new, everything's possible, a lot of commitment to whatever they're taking on. And so that was one of the special times I enjoyed mentoring that group, probably as much or more than any other group that I worked with.
Well, for me, and this might, not be considered so joyful, but recently I've been able to help out and assist in some funerals of Vincentians, and just being able to pray in thanksgiving for the gifts that they were for their lives, to offer that thank you to the families, to let the congregation know what these people have done, and that the responses have been tremendous from the family, from the congregation, that you know, we follow, and we're a friendship through the grave.
Yeah, yeah, that's
I think like Ralph and Ernie, from the perspective of the CEO, there is so much joy. I mean, there's a lot of work, but you get to see the good that happens across the organization, and the people who show up to do the work. And I have two favorite things from the last year or two. One of them is our Care Cafe fundraising breakfast last year. And we went around and around who was going to be the speaker, who was going to be the speaker, who draws people into the room, who will encourage people to give generously. And it's really hard to find that right person. And ultimately, we decided to use our own staff. And John Cobb, who is over, the Associate Director of Retail Ops over at the Processing Center, was our MC. And he is just a really fun guy. And Chris Kane, who is our Senior Director of Client Services, who's been with us for 29 years, and he knows this business. He knows how to take care of people. And when I met Chris Kane 4 years ago, he would not do a 10-second cell phone video for me. And here he is, just bringing the room to its knees with his storytelling and connecting people to the fact that their dollars mean people eat. And it was just such a beautiful, beautiful morning to see both of those men who are so committed to this organization and to the people it served just really shine. That was cool. And then the other thing that I'm proud that we have done, and I suspect it might be how Ralph feels about the pharmacy, is we started a microlending program that is keeping people out of the hands of predatory lenders. And we intended to start it small, and it has grown very fast. But there's 45 families now that are safely housed because they're not paying exorbitant, 300 to 800% interest rates. They're paying an interest rate of 5%, and it is life-changing. And I'm just so glad we could make that happen.
Through our community partners of the banks involved.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Couldn't do it without them. We are not bankers.
Right.
Another incident I'd like to share that was a real highlight for my time here is when we hosted the annual assembly of the National Assembly here in 2013. We attracted probably 600 to 700 people here from all over the country and put on what many people say was one of the best assemblies they've had. Especially, we were able to share the programs that we have here. And part of the joy was seeing how proud our employees and volunteers were to show off what they had here in Madison and to give workshops explaining the programs. And we also had our international president here, and it was the 200th birthday of our founder, Frederick Ozanam, which was why I particularly wanted to host it that year, because I really love our founder, Frederick Ozanam.
Wow, yeah, what a moment to have 600 and some guests.
Yes, we're a fairly small city to be able to put on such an event, so I think we did a great job in it. A lot of people who didn't have other things that they thrived at before stepped up and used their talents in ways that they hadn't been asked to before, so it was a good time.
Good opportunity. Yeah, Peg, what were you?
I was drawing on, I talked before about entrepreneurialism, and the pharmacy and the microlending program are, for me, examples of that entrepreneurial spirit. And it isn't many people associate entrepreneurism, I hope I've said that correctly, as dollars, that it's dollars. But I would say within this context, it seems to me that the entrepreneurial spirit lives in how we imagine how we can serve others. And the pharmacy and the microlending are examples of that.
There's a St. Vincent de Paul quote that I think pertains, and he said, "The poor suffer not so much from a lack of generosity as from a lack of organization." And what our organization can do is structure charity in a way that it's still caring, still focused on the humanity of those served and those serving, but at the same time, give it structure that's useful and sustainable.
I think we'll move from the moments of grace to the moments of challenges here. So challenges, overcoming obstacles. I have a question that's directed to those of you who have had the CEO role, and then another question that's more general. But that's a challenging role on a good day. What was one of the toughest challenges you faced during your CEO tenure here? How did you and your team overcome it, and what did you learn from it? That's kind of a three-parter there. What was it? How did you overcome it? What's the learning from that?
Well, Ernie had a pandemic.
Let's start there.
That is what comes to mind.
On
And
your
my
watch.
solution was to hire Julie, as he says. The pandemic, for an organization that performs person-to-person service at the very hyper-local level of the conference and at the county-wide local level, let alone all the levels above that serve those, the pandemic was a significant challenge. And but you know what? One thing is the community, I think, intuited, not just with us as a service organization, but with others that were involved in direct service, how much of a challenge that time could be. And there was generosity offered our organization and others doing direct service during that time. So that was an important means of overcoming that challenge. But certainly, trying to engage in social distancing while still providing service with the threat of a pandemic that was really significant. We almost forget. I think we have some amnesia about this, but it was difficult at time. Our pharmacy had to close briefly, for instance, because of one of our volunteers getting COVID and having inadvertently exposed a number of our staff and other volunteers, and everybody was okay, but on that one. But that was a challenging time, and very frankly, bringing Julie on during that time, thank you, was a big help, and staff were dedicated in general and highly committed, and our members were too. They had to find new ways to serve, sometimes doing a home visit at a picnic table somewhere, for instance. So
can you describe the first few weeks here? Did you go to remote work, or did you have the staff continue coming in? Or?
We went to remote work for those who could, but since it's a place of direct service, we also had a lot of people who were still in a position of serving in this building, the Middlecamp Center, sort of locked up in their offices generally and observing when they had to be near each other, pertinent social distancing guidelines out from the CDC, the 6-foot rule, which was a wild guess on their part and ours. And we wrote up protocols to make sure that we were being as responsible as we could, both for our staff, our volunteers, and for those we served. But and we moved outside in terms of service, both Pantry and pharmacy, which got all the more challenging as winter set in.
Yeah.
But we made it work.
Thank you. Ralph?
Oh,
Ralph?
maybe.
Challenge?
Well,
Lessons
one
learned?
obvious one, the fire that Ed mentions, absolutely everything was in the air for well over a year, and we got through that. Maybe just even more so though was my early days here. I mean, I took over an operation that was not great people, well-meaning people, but it was not thriving, and there were many times that we were lucky to have enough money for payroll. Some of the staff we had, because we weren't paying them well, were really not competent to do the jobs we asked of them. And so the early years of this organization and working here were difficult. We had the men's housing, the Port St. Vincent de Paul, and we had only the Williamson Street store and a food pantry, which pretty much I packed the food myself. But there were more than one time that you show up in the morning and you had 40 pickups on the truck, and none of the truckers bothered to show up that day. So I put on my blue jeans and hopped on the truck and did home pickups, and those were days before cell phones, and so communications was difficult to manage an organization, but we got through it and had good leadership, good presidents over the years who cared for the employees, they cared for the organization, and were willing to work with me and grow this organization into what we have today.
It sounds like you were learning some tough business lessons there.
Yes, I probably should have gone to business school rather than the comm arts degree that I have. Although my second president, Ed O'Neill, who provided a lot of leadership. He was strong-willed about a lot of things, but he said, if I knew you were a debater, I would have never hired you. We had more than one argument about things, but we always managed to eventually come to agreement.
Well, it sounds like one of the lessons learned from that was right person in the right job. Yeah. Julie.
When I took this job, and a year into the job, I had the opportunity to go to our national meeting where there was an executive director's track. And I had the opportunity to meet other people in this role. And I was the associate executive director at that time. But I found my people there. I found who when something arose, and again, like seriously, I have Ralph and Ernie, but when something arose, I learned who I could call. But I also learned that my transition, and I learned this even more the following year, that my transition into the CEO role was very different than it is in many, or it has been in many St. Vincent de Paul organizations across the country. I've told so many people I landed in the honeypot. Not everyone walked into a very strong organization like I did, and that has been an incredible gift to me as I have learned what my role is under Ernie's mentorship, and then growing into it myself. I think the challenges, we are looking ahead at them. The first couple years have not been like house on fire, but our new strategic plan, we were intentional about saying we're not going to do this new thing or that new thing, but instead we're going to seek a deep understanding of what has changed in our community and in our organization after the pandemic so that we can understand what it's going to take to serve going forward. And that is a challenge. Part of it is predicting the future, and I'm not very good at that. But part of it is, I don't think anyone expected it would be this different, that there would be so many more people who need help, that we, our Catholic churches are going through a really big change now with the into the deep consolidation process. And so even our conferences right now are learning what it means to be a conference in a multi-parish pastorate, and how you maybe work more closely with other conferences, and should they merge. And they're working through all of these questions that remain an unknown, and it feels like there's a lot of that right now, that there's an unknown. But we had this, again, we're just blessed with these opportunities and these people who show up in this space. We were looking at how to make the food pantry work better while it's still outside, because there's too many people using it to bring it back inside. And we were gifted with 2 systems engineers who walked us through a process of evaluation that is helping us rethink things across the organization to make things better for everyone. So, in my world, I call that the Holy Spirit at work, and hope to notice in the moment. I'm usually better at it in hindsight. But we have been gifted with these people and these talents and these ideas that help us overcome the challenges, even those that are still to come.
I like how forward-looking your answer is there.
About challenges?
History interviews tend to be about history, but you're really a forward-looking CEO. And there's a great deal of strength in what you just said. So now opening up the question to everybody, was there ever a time when you questioned your involvement? Like, maybe this isn't the right time and place for me. What helped you persevere through that feeling of doubt, that questioning your involvement? Anyone? Particularly rainy day in the garden, maybe?
No, sometimes I thanked. I was very grateful for the rain in the garden a year ago, the drought.
Yeah.
For me, and certainly I had the struggle professionally, and as a volunteer, is balance. How much time do you give to the various buckets of your life, whether you're being paid to do that work? And we have a joke in my household that I used to be a highly paid administrator, and now I'm a highly unpaid administrator. and I'm happy for the change. It's not a problem. But the challenge of balance with family, with personal interests, with your spiritual life, with volunteering, and throw some other buckets. Balance is a challenge.
Yeah. Well, very good answer.
For me, it's really not just believing in the providence of God, but actually seeing it working in my life. After working with Ralph for 7 years, I was given the role of general manager of the stores, and he was still around, but I was very dubious about that. And things went well, but I saw an opportunity to go back into my old work of parish ministry, and I did that. Little did I remember, though, that as soon as I was no longer an employee, I was a candidate for volunteer leadership. And somebody, I won't make me...
Figured that out.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that until somebody came along tugging on my sleeve and said, would you put your name in for district council president? And I looked at the situation and I thought, some of the reason I left was because I was relying too much on myself, worrying about what was going to happen if I was in charge of all these employees. But here I was again being asked to leap into something that I really didn't expect, and I didn't know how it would work with having a different full-time job and just in the letting go and not worrying about things so much, kind of met that challenge. It's been a personal challenge throughout. I remember at work running the stores, I would come home and lose sleep thinking, okay, which truck driver is going to crash into the overhang of one of our parish church's drop boxes, or where's the alarm going to go off where somebody inhibited the, whatever was going on to make that alarm go off. And I found that over time and prayer and just a kind of a personal relaxation that it all works out. And it's just so obvious, but sometimes those of us who are closest to talking about the faith have a ways to go to interiorize it. That happened to me.
Okay, I think that's a good place for Deacon Dick to come in.
With me, since the bishop assigned me to this role, I really, I'm here. But the challenge that I saw, at least in the early days, was every month to come up with some kind of a new and exciting spiritual reflection and stuff like that. Now, lately, the national offices have just invested so much more in the spirituality of the society that there are so many resources for spiritual advisors that, really the challenge is, which one do I use this month? So it's really a wonderful challenge now. And they are beautiful resources.
Oh, I love the way your answer balances Ed's very practical, tactical worries with your more spiritual ones. Very good.
Yes, one of the challenges I had, I was going to actually use exactly what Ed said. One of the challenges I have is when people leave. You got the people that you've trained or you're feeling really good that we're on the right track, and then they get called to something else. And I did figure out a few weeks after part of you leaving, the grace in that was, you could be my next boss. My friend's sister, Karen Knieves, who was in the national office, and a great resource for years, has a phrase that says, we live our lives going forwards, but we understand them looking backwards. And I think that really sense of providence that when we're in those moments that you think it's all going wrong, that still that things will work out and maybe even be better.
Yeah. Well, we're down to the last two questions here. You all know what the last one is. But before we go there, reflecting on proudest achievements. Now here I'm asking the humility team. But what is something that your team, your organization is proud of, and how has it impacted the community? Where have you seen the impact on the community and you go, I am proud that we did that? Well, micro-lending comes to mind for me. Of course, you spoke about that.
I actually would take a step back from that, though. About a year and a half ago, maybe not quite that, a year ago in the summer, we did a leadership retreat day with our senior staff. And part of it was truly to give me an opportunity that our staff together would have some deep learning time with one another to help me better understand who each of them were as individuals and how they worked together. And so we really focused that retreat day on strengths and understanding our strengths and what each of our leaders brought to the table. And I think that did two really important things for us. The first one was to really acknowledge, there is a lot of strength in this room. There is so much talent. And as we looked around and worked together and learned from each other that day, there was a building of trust, right? That I know these people are all as committed as I am. They are bringing their best, and their best is really good stuff. And then I think what has grown out of that is their growth in their own leadership, which has led to things like microlending or the changes in the pantry or re-looking at what's going to be happening at the processing center as some other things have changed. But this mindset of we've got this group of people who are willing to engage with one another to bring the best to the table, and that is bringing out goodness throughout the organization that is serving our community well.
Wonderful. So, others, achievements that have impacted the community?
I'm thinking of at the conference level and during the pandemic, and Ed talked about the importance of that second meeting where business didn't necessarily have to be conducted, but you were really trying to respond to the needs of the conference members. The pandemic actually gave us our opportunity to establish a second meeting in the month, which was by Zoom, and it was half an hour. And we really focused on someone would bring a thought or a prayer, and we were responding more to the members of the conference. And during the pandemic, we also had our needs as members of the conference. So as conference president, I was proud to establish that second meeting, and it has continued under new leadership. It's continued and improved.
I'll go back to a time when Ralph was the CEO, and I was for a while the director of community relations, and then I was the associate ED. But early in that time, this place got built, and so much of that credit is Ralph's and the vision for it, and the practical work to make it happen. But beyond that, it was also a team effort to build this place as a central locus of service in the county from St. Vincent de Paul. Per Peg's mention, the conferences are where the rubber meets the road at a hyper-local level, but next level up is this. And it really became and is a significant site of resources for people in need across the county. Food, medicine, and the range of other services that we coordinate out of here, many which are then, for instance, furniture visits filled by our conferences. But I was on during a period where I saw that growth and was among several or many really, who got to support it, all drawing on the generosity of the community as well, because that was probably our first major outreach to the community in a concerted way to do, for instance, a capital campaign, which built this place. So I'm proud of that, and certainly Ralph should be.
Well, it's a huge example of impact on the community to have all of this, as you say, a locus of service.
When I think of what I might be most proud of, it probably is not all the programs I've seen grow, but somehow I interested a lot of people, such as many of you, to join this organization and put your talent to work. And if I was some little part of that, I'm very pleased that I was able to do that.
And building on that, I've, as a deacon, been involved a lot with ecumenical groups and things like that. And I was able to take some of the ideas and actions that we do here with St. Vincent de Paul and share that with Lutherans and Methodists and United Church of Christ people and other people in the community, and the ways that they look at things now is different because of that.
Wow, that's a widening impact. Thanks for sharing that.
Building on that, the Recycle the Warmth program included not only the local Catholic churches, but many of the other churches. And then, that was 30 years ago, and even till now, the things I hear from people who don't know my connection with Society of St. Vincent de Paul, who say, oh, St. Vinny's, they've got great thrift stores. Oh, St. Vinny's, they've really helped a lot of people. Or We think they're just the best charity around, and hearing that from people, and a sense that whatever the thing that it's touched them the most, whether it's shopping in the store or receiving help, or the conference members who are full of joy at what they're able to do. It's really radiated out to the whole Madison area, Dane County area.
Wow. Wow, that's great to think about.
Very early, when we had the expanded food pantry, we were already then the biggest food pantry in town, and Alice Selo, who a lot of us remember, a very important person in our growth and history. But there was a point where one of the other food pantries in town, the Salvation Army, had to close because of lack of resources. And so it was the front page of the local newspaper. And so it was editorial, what are the poor going to do? People are going to starve in Madison. The truth of the matter was that they served only a fraction of who we were serving. But Alice and I both came to the realization that it's not the newspaper's fault or Salvation Army's. We, out of our humility, really didn't let the community know what we did. And that was one of the initiatives. We really started realizing that as important as to be humble and not to brag unnecessarily, we really owe it to the community to let them know what we're doing, and to thank them for the resource, but also to increase the resources that we need to do that job. And so there's lots of other good charities out there, but it's also important that we let the community know how we fit into that picture.
Yeah. That's interesting. Humility is a...
Isn't
And
always useful.
Yeah, well put. So, how would you describe St. Vincent de Paul Madison in one word or phrase?
Seeing the face of Christ in those we serve.
A gift of the Holy Spirit.
Community building.
Neighbor helping neighbor in Christ.
Spirituality, service, and friendship.
Versatile.
Well, thank you all for being here and participating in this conversation.
Thank you.
And thank you to each of you for being here, for the service that you have given, and for the second century of service to come in Dane County.